I do think that physical pain is an important aspect of the dystopia, because dystopia is supposed to mean, like uh, one of the worst societies imaginable, and one of the worst things a human being can experience is physical pain, along with like psychological pain and like stuff like that. So um, if you want to make a world that's awful, I think physical pain is an important aspect of that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Story Building, where the stories happen when the storytellers tell the stories to the people who listen to the stories. Today's guest is author, journalist, political commentator, and cultural critic. It's Justin Little. And I just said just then that you are a cultural critic and political commentator. Are those titles that you currently accept and appreciate?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's I think I do most of my political commentary on like social media websites and things like that, and there are elements of my fiction and my previous essay collection that I would say constitutes political commentary, um, cultural critique, stuff like that. So yeah, I would accept it.
What's the difference between critiquing politics and critiquing culture? Aren't they sort of the same thing? Or downstream, one's downstream from the other one, whatever they
Oh
say.
yeah, I have heard that. I think um, that is a very good question. I think it is true that I think politics and culture have sort of merged, where like I don't know if it's just my perception, but I think previously you could sort of define like pop culture by things, at least in America, by like things like American Idol, or like they're different, like they're like Jersey Shore, things like that. That's sort of like a poppy, like a pop culture type deal. But I think that politics and pop culture have kind of um, fused in a way. So I think it's very difficult to separate the two things. But generally now, I think that sort of like cultural critique is kind of like restricted to things like critiquing art and things like that, because you know I think art is sort of the main driver of culture. But yeah, I think yeah, I don't think it's a one-way relationship between politics and culture. I do think so culture is downstream from art, but I don't think that culture always necessarily flows into politics. But yeah, I think it's more of a two-way relationship.
Right. Okay. All these streams and directions. I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that we have to acknowledge the giant pumpkin head stitch faced looking thing elephant in the room.
Certainly, yeah, absolutely.
When people, myself included, think of you, they think, oh, it's vernaculars from YouTube. It's
Right,
vernaculars.
right.
And now, from what I can tell, all those videos are gone. But for those who don't know, what is vernaculars? When I say vernaculars, what is that?
Um, it was sort of like at the beginning, it was first of all, it was a YouTube channel for people who don't know, and it was just sort of a way for me to um, express sort of the political side of myself at a certain point, because I didn't really have anybody in my personal life who was interested in these things. So I would sort of I'd bring something up and then I'd ramble a little bit, and then people would say like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense," and stuff like that. Like they didn't like it's not, it wasn't something they were interested in. It's like sort of trying to talk like basketball with somebody who doesn't really care about basketball. They don't. So ultimately, it was a way for me to express the political side of myself, and it evolved over time. At first, I was just kind of rambling in my kitchen for a little while. I would write like notes and then ramble on about something or other.
Your kitchen? Why did it have to be your kitchen?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it didn't necessarily have to be. It's just that
The acoustics
That's
worked well.
that's where the best lighting was.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it evolved over time. Um, I would respond to other sort of political creators on YouTube, and then after that, it sort of morphed into kind of like a channel where I would post video essays and things like that. I also made a couple documentaries about historical figures. I would tell stories about not very well known historical events. I would try to express my political development in a way. Some local journalism, some personal essays, things like that. But yeah, it was just, at the end of the day, it was just a way for me to express the political side of myself to people who were interested to hear.
And now all those videos are gone. Well,
Yes.
why did you get rid of them all? Because there was a lot.
Yeah, there was a lot. It was just I knew that that's not what I wanted to do forever. And I believe I started the channel, I think, when I was like 21, and I'm 28 now. But yeah, I was sort of I was reaching a milestone in my life where I was thinking, like, can I envision myself doing this at like 52? You know what I mean? And I just I couldn't. And I knew that if um, because I had built up an audience for one specific form of content, and that was sort of like politically opinionated content and things like that. It's just something um, it's something I didn't want to be expected of me forever from the audience that I had built up. And so I felt that I needed to, in a way, start over and build up an audience of people who were interested in the things that I was going to be doing, which is like novel writing, short stories, like things of that nature.
Are you still glad that you did all of that? Or if you could go back 7, 8 years and find yourself just as you were about to publish your first video, would you say, no, stop, don't do it?
No. I think I would. If I went back in time, I feel I would still let myself do it because, I made a lot of good friends doing that type of thing. I've learned a lot of things about myself and about various issues that I talked about, because when you're in a very like combative or argumentative political space, if you get something wrong,
That's every political space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's, I don't, there's, yeah, it's true. I don't think you'll find a sort of a peaceful, kumbaya political space anywhere. But yeah, I mean, if you get something wrong, there are people who will let you know. And so, it was a way. It was it was it was a very valuable learning experience. So I would still, if I went back in time, I'd let myself do that. And I'm still, I'm proud of the work I did.
In my own research of the history of your videos and why you eventually got rid of them, I found a phrase that you said on Twitter when someone asked you why you got rid of the videos, and you said that you had to undermine your own ego. Could you please elucidate on that phrase?
Absolutely. A lot of people in when they talk about the use of social media, they speak about how it's a very it's a very mean place. So there are people out there who, they'll say mean things about you, they will, they'll call you names and stuff like that, and there's a lot of unearned negativity. But when you're in a political space and you start to grow, and I think as I started to grow, I started to get a little bit more nervous that I was going to be receiving a lot of unearned positivity in a way. And and I didn't want myself to. I sort of had to make sure that I was in this for, the right reasons. That I was doing this for the right reasons. That it wasn't going to be, oh, I'll just do things to, oh, my channel's growing. I'll do things to, make my channel grow, like things like that. And it would sort of like I was trying to avoid getting a big head, essentially, or sort of like rob people of the opportunity to try and give me a big head, if that makes sense.
Whether this was the intention from the start or not, when you were just that vernaculars head, could that have been a benefit to what you're talking about, where people don't really know you wouldn't have a famous face because you're just an avatar? Does that provide a bit of protection from that unearned negativity and positivity when people see an avatar, not what I'm seeing right now?
Yeah, that's true. But the sort of stitched up, puppet head, I believe that was introduced a little while after I started to make videos. So my first, I would say maybe 20 or 30 were, you could see my face. It was me in the camera. So in a way, people already knew, what I looked like. People did know my name. But I don't know. It's just I didn't feel safe behind the mask, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, all right, yeah, that was what I was asking. Okay, I have a quote again from you from 2017.
Oh wow! Okay.
2017 just feels like 2 years ago. I keep God, time flies when you're in your
Yeah,
life.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Okay, it was on Sargon of Akkad's stream in 2017. April 1st wasn't a joke. You said that I think one of the main things that people like us have to contend with is that it's possible that we could get completely bulldozed here. So if tactically we can't have all of our income be dependent on AdSense and things like that, if the enemy has their finger on our income dial, they could turn it off whenever they want. Did that sort of thinking influence how you made videos and how you eventually stopped? That fear of getting it taken away?
At this point in time, I would kind of contend with the use of the word enemy. But yeah, I was sort of worried about income, like towards the like when it became my sole source of income. It was very worrying because there are always these there's sort of like a shifting sand of terms of service and things like that. So one day, like a social media platform like YouTube could decide that a certain thing is no longer allowed on their platform, and it can be anything from just, I don't know, dropping an F-bomb in a video or something like that, and so I was sort of worried about how unstable that was financially as well, and so I did reach a point in time where I was still doing I was still making videos, but I'd also diversified my income a little bit, so I wasn't as worried. But yeah, I would say that was an influence. I was like, yeah.
I'm always very worried for people that just have a Patreon and their job is to make videos on current events, and then people just pay because they have videos. I mean, that's you didn't do this, but so many people out there, their job is just to restate the news. It makes me makes me mad in the head. Okay, so I have another quote from you, and then we'll get onto your book. It isn't just about quotes that you've said, even though I'm going to quote the book. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Ooh, we're going to 2022 now.
Oh boy. All right.
Jan 6th, you made, which was actually like a month ago. I'm keeping up to date with my questions. All right, cool. You said this: we're on 5 levels of meta. First, we liked content, then we liked drama between content creators, then we liked people who reacted to content, then we liked drama between people reacting to content. Now we like people who react to the drama between people reacting to the content. And I completely agree. In fact, I got rid of my Disney Plus account because all I do is watch people react to the shows that I would watch if I had it.
Yeah.
And again, is this happening? One of the reasons why you stepped away considerably from just having YouTube being your main thing?
In a way, it was I think a long time ago, but I was watching an interview with a British writer named Martin Amis, and he was talking to, I think it was, yeah, right. I feel so bad for the guy, but that caught me off guard. That was fun. I think it was being interviewed by Charlie Rose, and he said something like that people are far more interested in the writer themselves than the writer's work. And so that's kind of what I was noticing, and kind of what I was worried about with YouTube, where if sort of like there are some people who are online who think that because you make your political opinions known, then that means sort of like the rest of your life is kind of fair game, and people eventually become far more interested in who you are as opposed to what you've made. And I wasn't interested in that. I wasn't interested in having that happen to me. So
you'd rather be appreciated by the work that you create rather than who you are as a person?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, at least from the people who are consuming the work.
It's like
I would want the work to stand on its merits. I wouldn't want them to think, oh, this is good because this person made it, or this is bad because this person made it. And that sort of seems like the zeitgeist of sort of online politics at the moment.
What does zeitgeist mean?
It's a fancy word that means sort of the general trend, or the meta conversation about the general trend.
Okay.
The discourse,
Okay, so finally onto stories in this storytelling podcast thing. Finally, so the book, The Men Who Take Eyes. So for those of us who didn't buy the book online, but then it didn't arrive in time, and then the author gave them a PDF, and then they read that and haven't even cracked the spine of this, what is this book about? Who are these men, and what eyes are they taking?
It's about a bunch of different men, but the premise of the story is that there's kind of a fissure in this unnamed, undisclosed nation where there's an ongoing political struggle, but like even at the beginning of the book, you can kind of tell that it's not really about anything aside from power and victory. And so the book itself was supposed to be kind of a thought experiment about, how might people act if that's all we cared about.
It is a dystopian setting, and can I just ask you what is a dystopian setting? In fact, on the blurb itself, the first three words are the dystopic vision. What is a dystopic vision? What is dystopia?
Dystopia, I would say, is ultimately, I feel that dystopia is kind of it's kind of a dark examination of the human condition. I'm a fan of dystopia. I mean, I remember reading 1984, and I think I was 13 or something like that.
Oh, that okay.
Yeah, and
I was 29 and I was like, whoa, oh my God, I'm getting freaked out here, man.
no, but yeah, and I remember the ending. Spoiler alert.
Mhm.
The ending made me so angry. The fact that Winston doesn't win, it made me so upset.
But
And
he feels like he surrendered and now he's sort of comfortable, but he's
yeah,
lost everything. He's lost his
yeah,
life and his mind.
yeah, exactly. And so I kind of based my work around, like, or at least the motivation for my work around that moment in a way. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, uh, dystopia is kind of a dark examination of the human condition. You're trying to, um, I think every dystopia is kind of a cautionary tale in a way. And I think the general thesis of every dystopia is sort of cautioning us against ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted to write something that was sort of along those lines.
In my very limited experience with dystopian stories, I've always found that it seems to involve some massive, corrupt, oppressive government. Can you have a dystopian setting that doesn't involve the government, or has a government that's fine, or is that a necessity?
Um, I don't think that's um, necessarily a necessity. I think that there can be dystopias that are written. Um, I mean, I can't give any examples off the top of my head about actual books like this, but I'm sure you could write like a dystopia about like um, like a gigantic natural disaster, um, or like some sort of savage, like anarchic
Like
setting, or like it's like a Mad
Lord of the
Max kind of a
Flies?
deal.
Could Lord of the Flies be dystopian in a very sort of insular, small scale sort of way?
Yeah, I think yeah. I mean, yeah, I think there's a reasonable. Yeah, you could reasonably define that as a dystopia, like sort of an insular one.
Mhm.
Um, Dystopia also it kind of deals with like society in a way. So yeah, they sort of had like a little insular society on the island. So yeah, yeah, I think you can do that without kind of this big looming oppressive government structure.
Cool. When someone is first taking their crack at writing a dystopian setting, what do you think is the first thing that they have to establish so the audience, so the reader knows what's going on in a dystopian way?
Um, like in terms of the process of writing it, or like
Uh,
what the first page should be.
what uh, what what gives away to the reader that this is a dystopia place? What's the most obvious thing that should be written down so the reader goes, oh, this is dystopian?
Um, Maybe like first first we have to I think you'd have to establish that you're in like a society of some type, and then after that maybe um, you could have like sort of a set of strange behaviors where you're saying, okay, like I kind of like a little bit like oh god, what's it called, sort of an uncanny valley where it's like, okay, oh, everybody's in an office, they're all sitting down, they're on the computer and stuff like that, and then oh, but like they're being dragged away, and you know nobody really cares. Like there needs to be sort of like a, you have to establish that you're in some sort of society, and then sort of a set of strange and probably um, sort of negative leaning behaviors.
Hmm.
I think that could clue people in into sort of like, okay, we're in this, you know, we're in this world, and something strange and like not okay is going on.
Like in 1984 when they're eating their food and someone describes it as saying this is double plus good, like double plus good, like you
Yes, yes,
you know what he means, but it's like, why is he saying double plus good?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's a good example.
it's strange, but it's not too strange.
Mhm.
So you have now released your own narration of your book about, I'd say pretty soon to, it was about a week after I bought the book. So you did that on purpose. So I would have bought it and then it would have been free for everyone, you son of a bitch. Why did you make it public now?
I made it public now because, well, at the moment I'm working on another novel, and I want this story to spread around as much as possible. And I've noticed now that I think the general population now is more interested in listening to things as opposed to reading things. So I wanted sort of a palatable, sort of easy to consume way of getting the story. And I waited a little while before doing that, so people who wanted to get the story early, could do that. But then I just thought it would be a good idea because I just want more people to hear it. I want to get more feedback, see what people think.
Okay. Speaking and hearing, no offense, but when I got the PDF of your book, eventually, for efficiency's sake, I turned on the PDF read aloud robotic narrator voice on. It was okay. I mean, I had to look at the words so I knew who was speaking, but I got the picture as what's going on. Is that okay with you? Have I insulted you by not reading?
No.
Okay.
Of course, not at all. You know what? I do the exact same thing. Like sometimes if I really want to comprehend like a book I read through once and really enjoy, or I really want to get a lot out of it, is that I'll get the physical copy and I'll get the audiobook. And then I'll read and I'll listen at the same time. So it's sort of like my brain's getting two different forms of information. So like I feel that I can remember more if I do it. I'm not insulted. You don't have to worry about that.
So how did you get your book published? Because it doesn't look like it was self-published, from what I can tell.
No, there's a publisher, I believe based out of New Hampshire, called Clash Books. And they published both of my books. Actually, I have a friend named Nicholas Garoff who I was talking to just over the internet. And I said that, yeah, I'm working on this thing, and I kind of want to get it published, and I'm not exactly sure, how to go about this. And he was just like, okay, hold on. Like I guess he was friends with the publisher, and so he sent them my way, and then I sent my work their way, and eventually they accepted it. I was very lucky in that way.
Great. We're going back to Twitter then. Not then, now. Okay. In December 2021, you said this: to create something great, there needs to be a real risk of it completely crashing and burning. It doesn't have to be 100% pure and original, but it needs to be direct from the heart of the artists, following conventional wisdom on what role produces corporate mediocrity. So, how is your book risky and not corporate mediocrity?
Well, because it's direct from the heart of me.
Cool. Good answer. Next question.
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. What have I got here? All right. I'm going to go through a lot of quotes of the book because I did read it and then listen to it. Okay. Chapter 4.
All righty.
All right, we're starting with chapter 4. It's like Star Wars. The most difficult task for the propagandist to perform, Oliver, is to condemn. This is someone speaking to Oliver. Oliver's the main character. I should have established that. I'm sorry. Someone says to Oliver this: The most difficult task for the propagandist to perform, Oliver, is to condemn with full honesty the cruelty that his enemies display, and then, with full honesty, find that very same cruelty and unfortunate necessity when he performs it himself. Once he reaches the stage of enlightenment, there is nothing that he can't accomplish. So those kinds of statements where someone is saying an idea to another character, are those ideas that you had already had, or did they sort of form as you were writing the book? Are they your thoughts, or are they what you think this character would think regardless of what you believe?
In a certain way, I feel that I built characters in this story around certain ideas. So Reese is supposed to he's supposed to like that's the character that's speaking, Reese.
Reese, yes.
Yeah, he's supposed to sort of exemplify the kind of like the kind of shameless sort of political agent, actor, like that kind of thing. And so yeah, in a way they're my ideas. I wouldn't say that I definitely don't agree with what the character is saying, but I believe that this sort of idea is kind of like the base of like sort of the foundation of this character. So I will build characters around ideas. And yeah, you isolated a great quote that that definitely, you know, I think is the foundation of that character. So
There's a lot of great quotes, and we're going to get to another one.
okay.
Chapter 5. All right. Oliver, a character called Oliver. Someone. Oliver is in a war and he's about to shoot someone, and he picks someone amongst a group of other people. And the book says this: Oliver hated him and his stupid grin, sitting on a massive stockpile of rations and letting children of the insurrection starve. He deserved to die. It was perfectly logical to hate him. It reminds me of the moment in 1984. Not that I'm comparing your book to 1984. Not that it wasn't or was not inspired by 1984. Anyway, in 1984,
Yes.
Winston, the main character Winston, is being followed by a woman who turns out to be Julia. They have a relationship that hasn't happened yet. Anyway, Winston is being followed by someone called Julia, and he said, I forget the exact quote, but he's like, "I'm being followed by a woman. I'd like to get a brick and bash her head in and kill her." And I was like, Jesus, Winston, where's that coming from? But you. Not that you like the characters for saying these things, but you can feel a bit of sympathy for them because you know that they were born into a horrible, corrupted society. But do you think that there's anything that a character could do that is so horrible that the setting couldn't excuse it? Could any character in your book who's supposed to be sympathetic do something so bad in the setting that the reader has no choice but to hate them? There is no excuse.
Yeah. I mean, I think those things could exist. I'm not sure if I can, you know, say examples of them. They would be terrible. But I do think that there are ways to make a character irredeemable.
Regardless of a setting that might excuse it.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting into very deep philosophical territory that I don't think I'm qualified to talk about. But yeah, I think that when push comes to shove, you know, there are things that can make a character just completely, you know, unsympathetic. Like, I believe, like even though it's like incredibly, you know, well written, I think Nabokov's Lolita is kind of like a thought experiment in this way, where Nabokov is narrating like a completely irredeemable character, but I don't think he's trying to like make the character sympathetic, but I think it's sort of like oh, like this this horrible person, this irredeemable character can still be in a sense like, we can condemn them morally, but the way Nabokov writes is like, so beautiful that you can't help but, want to hear the person speak more.
Uh,
Um,
Lo-
yeah.
Lolita, that's where there's an old guy and a young woman. And
Yes, that's correct.
okay,
Yes.
cool, good. I had a friend who read it and he was like, "It's horrible, but it's so beautiful."
Yeah. I feel like Nabokov just sort of like, you just pulled a trick on everybody. It's just like, I'm going to write like the most beautiful prose you've ever written, but it's going to be about something horrible.
Yeah,
So it's just
quite a challenge.
it's yeah, but he did it.
This is during the war. There's like a whole war battle thing that goes on, like right in the big chunky middle of the book, and people are smoking in like a truck. Okay, each inhalation was a miniature sunrise, illuminating the faces of the men in a beautiful momentary orange and yellow gradient. And I was like, oh, what a nice, pretty phrase. And then, chapter 13, I came across this one. The overcast was oddly thin this evening, and the sleepy colors of the sun could be seen radiating in a soft semicircle over the horizon. The grainy purples, oranges, and reds filtering through the clouds looked like an old photograph that had been colorized and stained and stained every surface with a comforting, warm tint. Now, those sentences are not very pragmatic sentences. It's not he did this, he said this, or even he felt this way. It's descriptive of the visuals of the scene. What do sentences like that do for the book if it isn't about a specific action?
I think, these are sort of like these sorts of purple passages I enjoy in other works, and I use them when I want the reader to really take in the scene, because it's like the book, it can be very like heady, and it can be very action packed and violent, and in that respect, but like there are moments where I want the reader to sort of stop and like take the scene in, you know, and that's when I would use those sort of like fluffy words or descriptions. And I've always enjoyed sunsets and sunrises, so why not?
Do you think that the main character, at least the main character, going through some sort of physical pain is necessary or important when it comes to them being in a dystopian place? Because in 1984, Winston gets tortured. In this, Oliver gets not like torture, but he bad physical things happen to him.
Right.
Is that a must-have in a dystopian land?
It might not be, but I definitely think it helps. I think you could write a dystopia where sort of all of the pain is sort of kind of like psychological. But I do think that physical pain is an important aspect of the dystopia, because dystopia is supposed to mean like one of the worst societies imaginable, and one of the worst things a human being can experience is physical pain, along with like psychological pain and like stuff like that. So if you want to make a world that's awful, I think physical pain is an important aspect of that. But I'd be interested to read a dystopia where all of the pain is like psychological.
I think physical pain is psychological pain, because you can physically torture someone for them to believe certain things. I mean, that's what happens at the
exactly. Very true. Very true.
1994. Okay. So about halfway through the book, we're in prison, or we're in prison. He's in prison, and then he goes through physical pain, and then he's rescued from this prison. And a strange thing happened during this part when I was, I think, reading this, and he gets saved from prison. I wasn't happy for him. I wasn't like, yes, he's been saved from prison. He's going to have a good life now, because I knew that pretty much from like the start of the whole story, his mind and his life had been taken away. Was it an intention for you to write this moment where the protagonist is saved from prison and it isn't a happy moment?
Yeah, that was I was trying to,
Sure,
because
yeah, go on.
Yeah, I totally meant to do it, like right at this, obviously. Yeah. But no, earlier in the story, I wrote that, like sort of as a, not necessarily a throwaway phrase, but that he kind of felt free in prison, because the atmosphere of where he was living was incredibly like stifling, like a kind of sort of like a sort of a forced like self-censorship, but it's just it's mentally taxing. So I think it was just sort of like he was going from like one horrible situation to another horrible situation. But I think that the that transition there is very important, because he sort of recognizes that he's going from a horrible situation to another horrible situation. He doesn't think that it's like, in contrast to the beginning of the novel, where he's sort of like feels camaraderie with the the people there. He's sort of in it, he's on board. But then he gets saved, and it's not really a big shining moment.
He's just moving around. That's how I saw it. It's like that episode of Black Mirror where I think it was Bryce Dallas Howard, where they've got that, where it's like I think it's called a social credit system, where people rate your behavior, and at the end of the episode, she goes crazy and does bad things, and she gets sent to jail, and she has a conversation with someone else who's in jail. And the whole sort of ironic point is that these two people in jail, now that they're not being monitored, they're the most free out of all the people in society. That just made me think of that.
Yeah.
Black Mirror, good show.
Yeah, I've seen a couple episodes of it. It is a very good show.
All right. Okay. This little quote right here really interested me. All right, chapter 3. We're going all over the place. Okay.
All righty.
I think this is during the war. The war is a big part. Okay. A journal jostled around in his backpack. The first entry, he decided, would be about this weather and how during the brief pockets of still air, the pain would intensify as the cold no longer numbed the nerves. If the journal was for any purpose, it was so he could turn his life into something tangible, and history could be absolutely sure he existed. Now, I copied and pasted that quote from the PDF, and what I noticed is that, at least in this instance, I think in other instances, the word history, the H is capitalized. Is that a typo, or was that on purpose?
That was it was on purpose. It was sort of like it's supposed to represent like Oliver's like conception of what history is. But I don't know, that was kind of a pretentious flair from me.
Okay.
But
I saw it as like, it's not history, it's history TM. It's like hashtag history.
Ooh, I like that interpretation.
Like,
that's what I meant.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sure you did. It's like, it's not just this is the history of the place. It's like the history that's been trademarked from the government who control everything. That's why it's a capital, like the title of a movie. Yeah. Cool. So I've mentioned. Thank you. I've mentioned this several times in real life and a couple of times on here, I think, where I think journaling, and I've only started journaling like the last year. I think it's really important because it gives you the idea that you can leave something behind, and that's why I liked that quote. And spoilers, the journal ends up getting burnt, which I thought and destroyed, which I think is an important part, because now if he dies, he's just going to disappear from capital H history, and now that the journal is gone, he doesn't really have anything left. No one will know who he is. So, bit of a personal question: did you write this book in the same way that someone would write a journal, that there would be a piece of you left over and an important brick that you have laid in society after you have gone? Was that start writing it?
When I first began, that was like it was the main motivation. It's even if it's kind of like a faint immortality in a way, writing a book and publishing it is it's a form of immortality, even if it's like an illusion. Even if you have something, you make a piece of art, you put it out there, nobody ever sees it or listens to it again, but so in the back of your mind, you know that it's there, and it's comforting in a way.
Yeah.
So I gave Oliver that like slice of myself and then burned his journal, and it was really mean, but I feel that it had to happen.
I agree. I think it is a good feeling to think that you will live. I mean, you essentially do live forever, as long as you're remembered forever by people. If they see a thing that you make, know your name, and then they show someone else that, and then they show somebody else that, you live forever. You're never gone unless you exist. No, you're never gone except when people remember you. You live forever, is my point. Okay.
Right.
Chapter 8. All right. Oliver's been captured. I think this is during the war. It's all during the war. He's been captured and he's been shown off to the enemy. All right. And this quote happens in his head. He's thinking this to himself. Nothing is more horrifying, dangerous, and easily controlled than a crowd of politically minded people. Put one of those in the wrong hands, even for the right reasons, and the apocalypse is all but inevitable. So, with that in mind, what do you think are the benefits of writing a dystopian fiction book when compared to writing an essay about how we might live in a somewhat dystopian place? Like, why make this book fiction? Why not just write an essay talking about your thoughts on dystopias and society?
I think that when I think writing a dystopian fiction, it gives you a little bit more leeway to exaggerate and satirize that writing an essay wouldn't. I think writing an essay would be much more it would be much more
Clinical.
almost like clinical. That's a good term. Like sort of like you're proving a syllogism of some type.
What a syllogism!
But just an argument, like A, B, A, like 2 + 2 = 4. Like just A, B leads to C. If P, then Y. Like that kind of stuff. But I wanted something. I wanted. I think dystopian fiction is freer than that, and I wanted that freedom to be able to exaggerate, and even if it's an exaggeration that like to the point where it's comedic, like I wanted the freedom to be able to do that. So yeah, I think dystopian fiction was much more. It was a freeing experience. I feel like an essay, I'd get really stressed about, does this make sense? Like, would somebody like actually do this? Like, does this apply to, this in the here and now? Like, will someone think this is stupid and all that stuff? But if you present these thought experiments in a work of fiction, then there's a little bit more play in the joints, a little bit more give, which I like.
And if it's fiction, you aren't insulting any specific people or nations. It's a fictional place with
Exactly.
with fictional people. This isn't the Soviet Union. I swear. All right. How do you think society has improved with books like this existing, with dystopian fiction existing? Do you think that we've learned important lessons? Have we learned enough?
I don't think we'll ever learn enough. And I'm not sure if, what I've written is even, a good lesson at the end of the day. But
okay, that's an extremely harsh critique.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, sorry. Let me just go up my Word document again. Oh,
I apologize.
How do you think society has been improved by people reading dystopian fiction books? Yourselves is one included.
Oh. Well, I think that just some people, I think, misuse dystopian fiction, where, like, let's say somebody reads 1984 and they say, oh, like, Big Brother, that's just like, this political party that I don't like. You know what I mean? And I think the ultimate goal of dystopian fiction is to learn things about ourselves, to look at the sort of the dirty parts of ourselves, the slimy, the bad parts of ourselves, acknowledge that they exist, and work to work around them, because I don't think we'll ever learn enough where everybody is perfectly good and doesn't have these like everybody has the urge to do wrong every once in a while, but it's I think it's these sorts of stories that can sort of remind people that they aren't immune to this kind of stuff. That these things, even though the dystopia is exaggerated and it's parody, satire, that kind of stuff, it's a basic acknowledgement that these parts of ourselves exist, and when you're aware that they exist, I think you can much better control them.
Yeah, new people are born all the time, every day, and we all have to learn this stuff over again. The people who know this stuff die, and the people who don't know this stuff are born and have to learn it themselves. About a year ago, I saw a play adaptation of Animal Farm, and it was the play was spearheaded by a communist group. And I was thinking, I thought Animal Farm was specifically an anti-communist thing. Now, I haven't read it, but is that an Orwell book? And is it specifically anti-communist? Because that's what I thought it was.
It can be. I think that Orwell, I think he had the intention of writing it as a way to metaphorically describe the Soviet Union of the time. But in the story, the farmer is not sort of he's not a good ruler of the animals, and if anything would have represented sort of whether it be monarchism or it was supposed to be a story about the betrayal of the Russian Revolution. I don't think it necessarily has to be only anti-communist. I think it can be a theme of sort of a just revolution betrayed. Like I think that's an angle that people can they can look at it through. So um, yeah, I don't think it's like contradictory or ironic for a communist group to spearhead night. In fact, I think that's a huge step forward. I think that's like awesome, guys. Like, I guess they've read it. Maybe they're they could be communists without being a huge fan of Lenin or Stalin or that kind of stuff. So, but that's another angle to look at it through, I think.
Okay, sure, fair enough. Good for them. The play was fine. Okay,
Yeah.
so right at the start of this entire video, I described you as a journalist. How are you a journalist? What does that mean?
A journalist, in my view, is somebody who observes what's going on around them and reports what is happening to other people at the end of the day, like just the baseline of what a journalist is. And I did that for a little while, but there are different forms of journalism that I experimented with. At the beginning, I was kind of like when I would try to explain something that's happening to people, I'd be very sort of prim, like proper, rigid, like try to use like sort of dry language so as to not color the story. But as I went along, I realized that this was not it was not the best way of going about things. And so I swung the pendulum all the way in the opposite direction. I read a lot of Tom Wolfe and Hunter S. Thompson, those types who they sort of spearheaded something called the new journalism back in the 70s or 60s, 70s. And it was sort of like the journalist goes out and like they make themselves like part of the story. Where I believe Hunter Thompson's first book was called Hell's Angels. It was like this motorcycle gang, and he basically went in, rode around with, the motorcycle gang, talked to. He was basically embedded like in the Hell's Angels, and he told the story like through his perspective, like how they treated him, how they acted, how they interacted, like what the rules of the gang were, like where they came from, that type of stuff, sort of told through his his perspective, like his like subjective lens. And that I decided was also not the best way to go about things, because it has all of the opposite problems. You end up editorializing too much, and you give people the impression that your perspective is the only one, or that somebody else going in, might have, seen or perceived something a little bit differently. So I tried to find a way to straddle that line, and it was very difficult. But I think in the my essay collection, my previous book, I have a couple essays in there where I try to straddle that line. But I don't know, I really wanted to write fiction, so I moved away from doing that as of right now.
Do you have a couple? Well, who are a couple writers that you think people should take a look at if they want to be as smart as you?
Dr. Seuss.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Let me see.
He was a doctor, apparently.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. I don't think I'm very smart, to be honest.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
where
Who
people
who
would
who
start.
were writers that inspired you to write your writings of ambiguous quality?
Um, oh man, I really enjoy George Orwell. Obviously, he was like my I read 1984 and I instantly had to read everything that he's ever written. Um, so him, I'm a big fan of uh, the way Nabokov writes is like Vladimir Nabokov and Marcel Proust are two authors that I think like they compose words the way musicians like compose music. Like you read it and you're just like, man, like I think it was Christopher Hitchens who said that like you read it and you think there's no way that this was written by human beings. Like it's just so like it's incredible. Um, I really enjoy and uh, try to I take a lot from the style of Dostoevsky. I really enjoy how his work was like every single book is somewhat of a thought experiment, and I really enjoy that kind of um, that basis for coming up with what to write about. Let's see, Hunter S. Thompson, um, Christopher Hitchens for like political um, topics. I enjoy Hannah Arendt for political topics as well. She wrote um, Eichmann in Jerusalem, The Origins of Totalitarianism, both very good books. Let's see, Charles Bukowski, I enjoy. Um, yeah, I mean, I could go on forever, but those are the main like when I think of who I sort of like who I've tried to learn from. Those are the names that I think of.
We've already mentioned how writing at least can be fulfilling because when we all eventually leave the earth, something that we have made can be left behind. Is there another reason why you would find writing fulfilling other than you will live forever in people's memories?
Well, certainly. I mean, like uh, uh, I enjoy creating things. Um, I like I've always loved reading, and I remember having like profound emotional experiences reading, um, and like some books have caused me to like to view the world a little bit differently, or at least consider viewing the world a little bit differently. Um, and I want to give that experience to other people. I think they're very valuable experiences, and um, if I can do that, with my work, that's ridiculously fulfilling. Like um, if I can do that for one person, I feel that I would have like succeeded as a writer.
That's what all the authors say. If this book helps one person, then it would have been worth it. I've always been pretty skeptical of that.
Yeah,
It seems
yeah,
like a lot of work for a little
yeah.
payoff. But hey, if
I'd mu- I'd, I'd much prefer two.
mhm, mhm. I mean, if you help out one person, you've helped out
Yeah,
a world.
yeah,
Because
and not even like necessarily helping out, but just like um, sort of to have the experience I had like while reading 1984. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be angry or the like I got like watery eyes reading like just the first like 30-35 pages of Swan's Way by Marcel Proust. It's just this way of connecting to um, the reader through writing. And um, I remember Marcel Proust. There was a specific scene that I really related to, and it's it really is like a deep like spiritual like reminder that you know uh, um, that you have like similar or the same human experience as another person in a specific circumstance. Like it's a way of not feeling not alone. um, and I think that um, ultimately that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, excluding yourself, do you think that we have a George Orwell of current times? Who is the George Orwell of now? If we,
There will never be another George Orwell.
well,
I don't think.
who's close? Is it
Who's
you?
close? Oh my goodness, it's not. It's not at all. Uh, like, I think of because George Orwell did an awful lot of like very important, very risky journalism. Like he like joined the Spanish Civil War and reported on it and stuff like that. So it would have to be somebody who like is not only good at um, writing fiction, but is also like um, willing to put all of that on the line for like the purpose of getting the truth out to people. I know like some journalists, like I would say like the people who are closest to George Orwell at this point, I feel are like war correspondents. um I value them a lot. I think they're probably the closest that we have. I'm not sure if, I mean, they're probably out there and I'm just not familiar with them, but like I don't know if there's going to be somebody who can be both like a great war correspondent and a great novelist. I think it's a very rare thing. But
All right. So, where can people go to find out more about you, your stuff, and support your work, and make you the next?
I, well, I'm always like posting on Twitter. It was at vernaculars, VERNACULIS. I have a YouTube channel by the same name, and I'm releasing the audiobook for The Men Who Take Eyes. New chapter comes out every Saturday at noon Eastern time. Yeah, that's where I am.
So, vernaculars, is that still a nom de plume that you're using, or is it just a coincidence because it was there before, so why not have it now?
Yeah, it's kind of that. It's kind of like, it was there before, might as well have it now. It's a funny story about how I came up with that name. It's I tried to Google a Latin word for idiot, and I'm not even sure if this is true or not, but vernaculos came up, like spelled with an OUS. And then I tried to punch that in, but somebody had already taken it. So I just put the IS at the end. And so that name, I believe, is a misspelled Latin word for idiot.
Is that the whole? I thought vernaculars was like vernacular and also is at the end of it. Like it.
No.
Wow.
I get a lot of that, and I didn't even notice it until afterwards. But I'm like, oh, okay, that works for me.
Mind. Wow. All right. So this, of course, brings us to the last question that I always ask when I do these things. And that is, of course, why are stories important?
Stories are important because I think it is very difficult for people to sort of express their raw selves to other people. And what stories do is it gives not only the writer an ability to cut through all of that masking and sort of put their raw selves on a piece of paper and give it to other people. And readers are able to experience somebody else's raw self in a way. And there's always this sort of a wink and nod between I think fiction writers and readers, where it's just sort of like, hey, no, this is just a story. Don't worry about it. Like this is just a story. But I think fiction is very important, and the stories that are told in fiction are also very important because we have a difficult time sort of expressing our raw selves and giving other people an insight into like our human condition. But I think stories give us a way to like realize on a deep level that we are all similar in numerous different ways.
Perfect. I'm always surprised by how different the answers are to that same question with each of my guests. Maybe by episode 100, I'll just stop asking it because all the answers would have just been said already. So
yeah, you have to keep going until you get like the same answer once.
Yeah, and then I'll stop forever. that's when I plateaued, and I'll stop. Not there yet, but we'll see. Okay, great. Well, Mr. Little, Justin Little, thank you so much for coming on to One Story Building.
All right, well, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.